all the sorts of things that you talk about in a negotiation. Well, when you start talking about that aggressively, and the president's a deal maker, he's made deals his entire life, you're not going to get people to the table. And so you start to perceive that maybe Zelensky doesn't want a peace deal. He says he does, but maybe he doesn't. And that active, open undermining of efforts to bring
I think that Marco Rubio is completely, I really hope that she asks, like, why is it a peace deal when they've broken peace deals in the past? That's the problem. The issue is that it's the definition of peace deal. He doesn't think that it is.
It's deeply frustrating for everyone who's been involved
Hopefully
in communications with them leading up to
I'll stop
today.
pausing
And I think we should apologize for wasting our time for a meeting that was going to end the way it did.
Yeah.
You yourself have said previously that Putin cannot be trusted in negotiations. That was the point that President Zelensky... he was ultimately making during that conversation is that there cannot be an agreement without security guarantees, because he was talking about all the ceasefire agreements before, or agreements that Putin has just blown past. I mean, do you still feel that way, that Putin cannot be trusted in these negotiations?
Well, I was there yesterday when the president said in front of the media that our approach is going to be trust but verified. President Trump's made deals his entire life. He's not going to get suckered into some deal that's not a real deal.
Let's assume that's true. Ukraine in 4 years will then have this problem after Trump is gone. That's the issue. The issue is this deal being contingent on Trump is building a castle on sand. Because the U.S. presidents rotate all the time. And again, like, I don't think that they want to take a 4-year armistice effectively for this, or a ceasefire, and then immediately after the new person comes.
Understand this. We understand it on our end for certain. And so the goal here is to get to a place, third term, we have to explore whether peace is possible. I've said this repeatedly. I don't know. I think it is, based on what they've said so far. But we have to explore that. How else is this war going to end? I ask people, what is the European plan to end this war? I can tell you what one foreign minister told me. And
somebody's saying I'm flip-flopping? No. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the advantages and the nuances of both perspectives. That's what I'm doing. And I think that both perspectives have weight and value. My perspective with this, just by the way, this is like my actual opinion. I think Putin will have to get something out of this deal. I don't think Putin should get something out of this deal. I think it's a pick or poison type situation. And unfortunately, we're in a place where in order to cause this problem to stop happening, we have to give something to a person that shouldn't get something. That's what my actual perspective is. That's what I think is going to happen. So, just in case anybody is getting it twisted, that's what I actually think.
I'm not going to say who it was, but I can tell you what one of them told me, and that is that the war goes on for another year, and at that point Russia will feel so weakened that they'll beg for a peace. That's another year of killing, another year of dying, another year of destruction, and by the way, not a very realistic plan in my point of view. So if there's a chance of peace, even if it's a 1% chance, that needs to be explored, and that's what President Trump is trying to do here.
President Trump said just when he was leaving the White House after that meeting that he doesn't think President Zelensky wants peace.
It's failed 25 times. Then
for that meeting today?
Well, he was in the Oval Office to sign a minerals right.
Stop!
He was in the Oval Office to sign today. But again, when you have comments that deliberately appear to be deliberately, I mean, after having discussed this repeatedly, deliberately appear to be geared towards making the argument.
Stop! Stop, Aslan!
What are you talking about? Almost as if to say, these people, you can't deal with them. You can't have any negotiations with Putin because he can't be trusted, and you're just wasting time on negotiations. Well, he's directly, basically undermining everything the president has told him he's trying to do. Look, there's no need for that. You start to suspect, does he really want an end to this war? Does he just think that, we have to do whatever he says and give him anything he wants without any end game? That was the Biden strategy. The Biden strategy. We were funding a stalemate. We were funding a meat grinder. And unfortunately, for the Ukrainians,
Iceland!
we've seen the human wave, the North Koreans, etc. And so this is a very complex thing. It's very delicate. It's very costly. It's very bloody. It needs to be brought to an end. But it isn't going to be brought to an end with public pronouncements of maximalist demands on the public, but in real diplomacy. The vice president was right.
When you say they don't care about life, are you talking about the Russians or the Ukrainians?
They're constricting by the hundreds of thousands. They brought in South North Korean troops that were slaughtered and cursed, and they keep going because they got more people. That's the other fact. Look at it. So, again, we go back to the same point. I'm not going to fall into this trap of who's bad and who's evil. People can make those conclusions. People have seen how this narrative is played out and where we are.
Yeah, and the reason why he's not going to draw that conclusion is because there is no conclusion to draw. It's obvious who's in the wrong. Everybody knows who's in the wrong.
Skull versus bullet.
Today and how this all started and so forth. The point now is it has to end. And the way it ends is you get people to negotiating table. And the president, who's the ultimate deal maker, knows you don't get people to a negotiating table when you're calling them names and you're accusing them of things.
Yes. He's absolutely right.
Because at the end of the day, this is not a political campaign. Okay? This is high stakes international diplomacy and an effort to bring about an end to a very, very dangerous war.
But you yourself, sir, have said before that you believe Putin is a war criminal, that is a widely accepted fact. You call him a butcher. And you said that as a Secretary of State, you do believe it's important for someone with such global influence as you have to speak with that kind of moral clarity.
Yeah, and at this moment, as Secretary of State, my job working for the President is to deliver peace, to end this conflict and end this war. Ultimately, that is the job of the State Department. The State Department doesn't fight wars, it ends them. It tries to end them.
I think that's a good answer. Honestly, that's a great answer. It's like it's not his place to put his... it's not his place to put his moral judgment on this. He's expert. I really think that Marco Rubio's been doing a really great job. Every interview I've seen with them, I think he's really been impressive. What do you guys think? I might not agree with him about everything, but I'm very glad Bill Marco's growing up. It's great to see, man, isn't it? Yeah, big Marco. Exactly.
And that's usually, by the way, celebrated.
Yeah.
I mean, throughout history, I've watched presidents that bring about ending wars and conflicts, and people celebrate that. They applaud it. I think we should be very proud and happy that we have a president and final check that is not to get into wars, but to prevent the wars and to get out of wars. That is a very noble, lawful role. Everyone should be applauding it. We should be given the space to do that, not undermined by demands that he call Putin names or that we say things that impede the ability to conduct real diplomacy, as the Vice President said today.
Yeah, it's not pragmatic to call Putin a war criminal in the middle of negotiating with Putin. It's just not pragmatic. Even if it's true.
To follow up on what you just said a moment ago, are you saying that you have doubts that President Zelensky wants this war to come to an end?
What I have doubts about is whether he's willing to say and do the things that we need in order to get a negotiation. But again, you guys, this has been going on for 10 days, and to see things in the press saying we're not coordinating with the Ukrainians, that's absolutely false. Over the last 10 days, the Ukrainians have met with the Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of State, the Vice President of the United States.
Somebody says it's a pragmatic call Zelensky a dictator. I personally don't think so. I wish Trump didn't say that. I thought it was stupid for him to have said that. I criticized that when it happened. Is that fair? I'm not like... Yeah, no, never said that. Yeah, I never said that.
Had a phone call with President Trump, and he was in the Oval Office today. I've talked to the foreign minister of Ukraine 3 times in the last 10 days. The argument that we're not engaged with, but yet you keep reading these press accounts about, they're leaving us out, we're not involved, we're not engaged. None of these things are true, and it continues. So all that led up to today is a deep sense of frustration. And my hope is that this ought to be reset.
Yeah, I think that this was a tip of the iceberg. And I think that a lot of private communications, it's very obvious the private communications were probably... I bet what we saw in the Oval Office has happened probably 30 times.
Surety can kick in.
At least a dozen.
Because this war tonight,
There's
people
probably
will die
worse.
in Ukraine. People will die in this conflict. We're trying to bring an end to this conflict. Sustainable political war that has to come to an end. And right now, the other leaders in the world are bringing about an end to this. President Donald Trump. And we begin on the opportunity to try and do that. And when you see efforts to impede it, when you tell someone, don't say, let's not talk about these things, let's not go in this direction, because it makes it harder for us to engage. And they see
ahead of time. Let's not escalate things and let's just get this done. Whether that's clear or not, it seems like that. You start to wonder. I don't understand people. You start to wonder what's behind. So, again, let's hope. And to be fair, right? If they did tell him that, and he did go on script intentionally, would you be pissed? If I were them, I would be pissed. Because now you're basically farming, right? You're like, I really hate to use this term because I feel like it's so diminutive, but it's like you're basically clip farming, right? You're doing a sound bite or something to say the right thing that like the media will see as the right person.
Don't let it escape.
They're intentionally throwing oil on the fire? Yeah, basically. Clip farming is so under exaggeration, but I don't try to understand the essence of that contract.
I'm not sure.
You don't believe that this can be, you're not sure if this can be valid. Do you think this relationship between Zelensky and Trump be fair in your view?
Anything is possible, but it has to go back to the point that
sure it can be. Absolutely it can. This is not a big deal. Like, I don't know, I like, as I said, there's like this transition.
Limited time.
Like, yeah, easy.
Trump is interested in being involved in this for the purpose of bringing about an enduring and lasting peace. That's what he wants to achieve. And I think if I'm a country, okay, that's involved in a war with a bigger country, who's losing thousands of people, who's had 3 million people leave my country because they can't be there, who is facing these challenges, I would be thinking he's trying to help bring about this war. I would be supportive of what he's trying to do, at least in my public pronouncements and in my public comments. And we didn't see that, and we haven't seen that for the last few days. Now, will that change? I hope so. Sure. For the purpose of these capabilities around the world.
Do you think you can make the argument that he hasn't something?
Well, I think my president said he hadn't said it today. He hadn't heard it today.
This is a pointless. This in my opinion, is all politics and like posture. This entire point about saying that.
Why the fuck do you guys speak with Russian accents?
That's my opinion. It's stupid and patriotic.
Negotiate peace. Without the help you gave us. By the way, without the help you gave us when you were president in the first term, because President Obama refused to provide them defensive capabilities in terms of military hardware. He did provide them blankets.
Yeah, and that was brought up today during that meeting.
Well, but it was brought up and I was there. In fact,
By the way, I also want to say real quick, I think two things are true. And again, there's a lot, I feel like it might be confusing for some people to watch this because like I'm kind of arguing on both sides. I think Zelensky should have opened it. I think he should have, but I think calling about it was redundant and counterproductive. Like, I think both things were he did. Yeah, and so there's the thing, and like, that's the interesting thing is that people said he did. I didn't see
You lost your head a long
if
time.
somebody conventional stuff, can you find a clip of that so I can see it and my mods can show it to me? Because like I wasn't able to watch the entire thing. There were no videos of it. Because I didn't see that at all. So if you link it to my mod, and I can pull it up my watch because I didn't see that.
Recall at the time Vice President Biden saying to me in a meeting that we had, President Biden wanted to provide them those defenses because they might use them. That was his exact quote. And that was, I remember clearly then the Ukrainian leaders saying, we don't need more blankets or MREs. We need weapons to defend ourselves. And they didn't do it. President Trump did. He provided them weaponry, some of it, much of it, which was used at the beginning of this war. And without those weapons being in their stocks, this war could have been over very quickly, 2, 3, 4 days. Another pot shot that Zelensky took today, when the president pointed that out, you know what Zelensky said? He said, yeah, we've heard that from the Russians. That's not a Russian narrative. That was the official position of the United States. I vividly recall being briefed of the Biden administration telling us that this war was going to be over in 6 days. They believed that was their assessment at the time.
Yeah, I know what he's talking
Stop.
about. Yeah, and also, by the way, I thought that too. And am I the only one? Because if you go back to like whenever this first happened, like I didn't cover it very hard because I think it didn't help in Ireland someday. So I was focusing more on that. But even then, like I've been talking about it and I thought Russia was
gonna smell like blood for days.
and so I could see how, like, yeah, Trump would be pissed off if you try to act like Trump repeating Russian propaganda. Because like, that's what I thought too. Like, there's no Russian propaganda here. I just thought that was good.
And it wasn't the case because of the weapons that Ukraine had in the stocks because of President Trump in his first term. So he should have been grateful for that and grateful for what we're doing now. And one more point. It's not just President Trump. There's news reports out there. From NBC News, at least one of them.
I want to just take a second here. One of my mods got me a link to the clip of him saying thank you. I want to watch it real quick, okay? I think this is like a really, really stupid fine point. Is that he said something to advocate the content. That's probably what JJJnc meant. Thank you for the invitation. Yeah. So it's like it's a yes and no. And it also did, like, that clip ended right then, so he could have said, maybe we could have that in 1 second. Yeah, he's still saying, this is the lamest thing ever. Yeah, well, like, you can see, like, I think, again, it's such a stupid issue. Am I crazy for thinking that? It's such a stupid issue. So, like, what are you doing talking about this? It's so stupid.
Well, as I recall, reporting that Biden had a shouting match with Zelensky for not being grateful and not being thankful for everything that was provided back in 2022. Yes. But it got out there. These frustrations are not unique to President Trump. There were frustrations in the previous administration with NBC News.
Yeah, right. But obviously we've never seen anything like what we saw today. But the point that Zelensky was making there is that everyone predicted his demise, and Ukraine was able to fight and to survive. So they're able to survive with divided with something like that the United States can assist Ukraine as long as Ukraine are willing to fight. So I think the question coming out of that meeting is what happens next year? If you are the U.S. diplomat, is there a path for diplomacy? Is a ceasefire still a possibility tonight?
Well, number one, you know who else said that Ukraine is very brave and very valiant? President Trump. He said it today. He said it repeatedly. Your soldiers are very brave. Your fighters are very brave. Your people are very brave. He said that repeatedly.
Yeah.
And everyone recognizes that. But we're 3 years into a war that has no end in sight and no exit strategy. The EU doesn't have an exit strategy. I saw the comments tonight from the leader of the EU saying they need a new leader of the free world. And these people are just playing silly games and saying these things. What is their exit strategy? What is anybody else's exit strategy? The only person on the planet who is trying to win this conflict is named Donald Trump, president of the United States. He's the only one that's trying to do it, and we should be helping him to achieve it. And so, do I think it's possible? It's possible. You try to do it in the Department of State. You try to bring end the conflict. You can start a new one, but certainly not extend it.
Senator Lindsey Graham, after having lunch with President Trump today, said Zelensky either needs to resign or they need to send someone over that we can do business with. Do you feel that President Zelensky needs to resign?
Well, that's Lindsey's feeling because he feels very confident. Very strong supporter of Ukraine. Lindsey Graham.
But what does the United States do?
Okay. Well, you're not taking no. When he said that, it's let him come back when he's ready to do this. That's what he said. Let him come back when he's ready to do this. So I think before them to the outset. I can only go off the words from the President of the United States. And that is, today, he's not going to put up Zelensky's ready to make peace. I'm serious about peace. Let him come back then. And that's what we're looking for them. And what I mean by that is,
how are you thinking about it?
well, I think it's everything I said already. And that is, how are you going to get Vladimir Putin and to discuss even an opportunity, even to explore whether there's an opportunity for peace? You know, that makes it feel very good. Resolutions you can put out very strong in one side. Senators can do it. I did when I was in the Senate.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And somebody did link me this, affiliate linked me this. Important visit to the United States and Washington with the bipartisan delegation of the U.S. Senate. Discussions focused on continued military assistance for Ukraine, relevant legislative initiatives. We've taken private strategic partners. We're grateful for the unwavering bicameral and bipartisan support for Ukraine. Again, I just think the entire thankful thing is total fucking, like, complete fucking red herring. Total fucking red herring. Entirely fucking irrelevant. Like, it was just a complete waste of time.
Can do it, commentators can do it, and countries that have no real skin in the game can do it. But when you are the President of the United States of America and you're trying to bring about peace the way Donald Trump is trying to bring about peace, the only way to do it is you have to create space for people to come to the table and talk. And that is something we should all be applauding, not criticizing. And not pretending that we can just extend this war forever until and everybody has unlimited resources to continue to fund it, on both sides, by the way.
And President Zelensky has said he does want this war to end. He just cares about how it ends. We heard that from the other European leaders who came to the Oval Office also this week. President Trump said to me today, before that shouting match erupted in the Oval Office, that he doesn't believe there have to be security guarantees in place before the ceasefire. That you can come to a ceasefire agreement and then put those in place. Do you agree with that?
That's not what he said. What he said is, why am I going to be talking about security guarantees? Let me get a peace deal first, is what he said. That doesn't mean they can't have that as part of that negotiation, but you have to have an agreement that, well, what peace is there to secure if you first don't have an agreement on peace? Like, what do the Russians need in order to end this conflict? Well,
so you're saying it would happen as part of the negotiations?
We are so close to recovering the central artifact.
You
Should
find
be
out
somewhere
what
in
the
that
required in order to stop shooting at each other.
Remember,
what do the Russians need?
the
What do
artifact
they need
is
to
our
see
only
in order
hope
for
of
them to
bringing
stop
Nexus
fighting?
back from
What
the
do the
dark
Ukrainians
ages.
need in order to stop fighting? And then once you have that in place, then we should decide to accept what you're and what do we need to make sure this never happens again. That it doesn't happen in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I don't think President Trump is interested in a ceasefire. I think he's interested in a 6-month ceasefire. He wants this thing to end. He has said that. But again, he's not going to use the kind of language that maybe plays well in the public sphere or in the political sphere for people that want to take shots at him. But he's not going to allow us to have a negotiation or even to explore a potential negotiation. President Donald Trump is a man who's made deals his entire life in business, and he's bringing those principles to government. And he's not going to look at any chance. If Donald Trump tomorrow decides, I don't care about Ukraine, I don't care about Russia, I don't care about this war, and he walks away, you,
Transmission emanated from the external telegraph.
even a 1% chance of getting the combatants to the table. The answer is there is no one. He is the only one who has any chance. There is a chance. Is he the only one that has a chance to deliver?
Maybe, I don't know.
Do you still see a meeting happening for President Putin, President Zelensky, and President Trump? Is that still possible?
Well, I think that's premature. I mean, what would they? You first need to make sure that this is even a possibility, and you have to explore it. And look, there's good signs, I think, maybe, somewhat about at least the Russians' willingness to engage. And but we have to explore all that. But that's not going to be done in front of cameras. It's not going to be done in an open ballroom. There's a lot of work to be done before we get to this point. It's a complex war that has causes behind it that nobody there's a lot has been invested on both sides. gained consideration in some places. All these things have to be done. But it's not going to be done for press conferences.
Nothing good is ever down.
To what the vice president said today, the serious work of diplomacy. It's, it's a lot easier to just say, war with Ukraine all the way, no matter what, however long it takes. Well, 15 years?
Yeah.
12 years? I mean, that's absurd.
Little
That's
heads
not
up,
sustainable,
talking
and
his
everybody
craft
knows
son.
it. The
I
president,
think also, like, what he's saying here is something that a lot of Americans feel, especially after, like, what happened in the Middle East and, like, us being there for 20 years. I think that there's a very, very big worry that if we don't end this and get out of it, it's just going to continue going on, like, indefinitely. And I feel like a lot of, like, again, this is like, these are people, like, it's like that guy, right? The guy was admitting, joking around, fucking around about how, like, so he ran away. So, like, that essence is accurate. I think that's the way a lot of people feel, is that they don't give a fuck about any of these countries because they can't afford it.
I felt like this when I earned my jump ropes.
Right? And so when they see that we are signing up, we are basically writing a blank check to a foreign country to help them fight off Russia, this is going to rub a lot of Americans the wrong way, because Americans want the American government to operate in their best interest. And I understand that you can maybe make an argument that, like, foreign, diplomacy and foreign intervention has, like, a long-term positive impact. But that argument doesn't work on a person who can't afford it. It just simply does not work on. And so that's the big problem, and I think that's the reason why, like, that's the reason why they're pushing back on it so much. Nothing good for the president, the president deals, how you just run, now he's running for it? Well, I don't know, right? I have no idea. Politics from separate reasons of here, yeah. That's absolute facts, yeah. Millions and billions still people overseas, yet our veterans dying the streets fighting for scraps. I mean, like, in some cases, I think that is the way that a lot of people feel. That is. So you need more money to lower the rent? Yeah, I think the idea is that the amount of money, like, so basically, the military-grade weapons and everything that were sent over to Ukraine, these were things that probably were paid for indirectly by American tax dollars. And so, yeah, people want those American tax dollars to go towards something. And so, that is, yeah, it's really that crazy to imagine when people think that. Directly? In some cases, it is directly. I was just trying to be diplomatic about this.
Wants to end this war, he wants to explore when there's a possibility to do it quickly. He campaigned on it. It was a promise of his, and he intends to. When he says these things, he doesn't just say them, he means them. And he's doing it. And it's the first time we've seen that in a long time in American politics.
Secretary Marco Rubio, thank you for your time tonight and joining us on September's birthday. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Rubio gave a great interview here. I'm going to be honest. I think he really cooked. He brought up a number of good points, and there's a video right there, and I wanted to watch it and kind of bring it up. Now, as I said, I'm a pretty good supporter of Ukraine. I have been for a while, and I think that Zelensky's concerns are very legitimate. But I think this is a situation where there is no moral good solution. There are these different shades of gray. And I think that, like, pushing for a moral good solution in the public's eye, it would probably rub Trump fans the wrong way. And it seems like, obviously, they're having, a breakdown in communication between what's being discussed privately and then what's being displayed in the media. And I think that that's really why things blew up so much yesterday. That's really where I think things are coming out of. And I've seen our games in the future. There are 3 years of complete corruption around that. Those presidents were released on bail and left the country and then being kidnapped. I don't know anything about that. I'm not even begin to even think about that. So yeah, seriously, the USA is not top 5. We have Ukraine versus countries using U.S. tax money to fund Ukraine. Well, it's undeniable the U.S. tax money is going to
stain in half his glasses.
It's undeniable, of course it is. Absolutely it is. What do you mean? Yes, like, obviously. Now you're saying that there's not a lot going on. Okay, fine, that's okay. but you're still not going to find people who are going to be happy about that, right? I don't know. I don't really see, again, if you don't know so much about it, why are you so very trained? Because I think that Russia is the aggressor. I think that they are an extremely threat. I think that them attacking Ukraine like that, after them annexing Crimea and breaking multiple deals, is a pattern of behavior that's negative. And I think also the Russian government is completely corrupt. That's the reason why. I think that they're bad actors. It's really that simple. I mean, I don't know, like, that's, and I'm not saying that, like, Ukraine is perfect, right? I think that Ukraine has corruption problems, and we do, and other countries do. Maybe even worse than ours, right? I have no idea. But I'm saying that that's my opinion of that.
New reporting suggests Elon Musk's Doge is getting closer to winding down the production bureau. According to CNBC, said that Musk and the agency's top-appointed leaders want to fire nearly all 1,700 employees. This comes as members of the Senate Banking Committee will speak to lead the committee on Thursday. And during that hearing, the agency dropped 4 lawsuits against firms accused of ripping off billions of Americans. The cases were originally filed under former director Rohit Chopra. And Rohit Chopra joined us now. Hey friends, how's it going? How's it going for you?
If you kick me in the balls right now, I wouldn't even feel it.
We've seen the CFPB hand out a series of corporate pardons in some of the biggest companies that were in the courtrooms, where there was inconsistent evidence that they had cheated consumers. The mortgage companies and including Capital One, which we accused of cheating people like $2 billion and stuff that worked out. So we don't know how these pardons are being carried out.
Calling the parties, right? They're not calling the parties.
We're going to a courtroom, getting the case out and saying it's never going to be
This
filed
thing
again.
hits half as crazy
So
as
it's
the
effective. And by the way, it's not just cases that were filed under my time. It's also some cases filed under the first
You want some food?
CFPB.
Yeah, you want some food? Food?
What is the ways in which these are handed out?
Yum, yum. Yum, 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 yum.
The Atlanta Federal Reserve is predicting a substantial decrease in the estimated GDP growth in quarter 1, 2025. For the first time in a long time, they are projecting negative growth. Not just a small amount either, but a negative 1.5%. 3.6% dip from what the line is held steady at for a time now. Incredible stuff. 1.5 is bad. Negative 1.5 is pretty bad. Yeah, that's a recession, buddy. We're receding. They recently updated it. Here, let me get the article. They recently updated it. Like, it's been getting more and more negative with time. Projections is significant shift for the Atlanta Fed. The Atlanta Fed last week was predicting 2.3% positive growth in the first quarter. A month ago, it was registering 3.9% growth. It's okay when GDP goes down, so is egg prices. I am economics. True, that's true. That's true. It's officially a recession if it happens for 2 quarters. Yeah, but going from a registered 3.9% growth to a predicted 2.3% to a predicted minus 1.5% is a shift down like 5 percentage points over the course of a single quarter. Remarkable. That's a leap. Yeah, pretty big one. Can you link this in chat? You can just Google it. Link this in chat. Hey, Teach, I know 10,000 people are watching, but can you link the easily accessible information that you could get by Googling it in the chat? Consumer sentiment also fell, dropping nearly 10 points from January. Jesus. It's going to happen, man. These early signs of weakening confidence could lead the U.S. administration to adopt a more conservative approach to spending cuts and tariffs. Why would Biden do this? We had everything. Stupid piece of shit. We had it all. You had to go pick it up. Right. Here we go. The actual source itself. I mean, they did literally say they wanted to reduce aggregate demand, which that is what we're looking at. Reduced economic transactions, that's a recession. You know, that leads to a drop in GDP. That's a stupid system. Why can't it just be, we have enough bread? Guys, we have enough bread. We made enough bread that everyone can get bread. No, you gotta pick it up. The nowcast of the contribution of net exports to first quarter real GDP growth fell from negative 0.41 percentage points to negative 3.7 percentage points. The nowcast of first quarter real personal consumption expenditures growth fell from 2.3 to 1.3%. Well, we'll see how it goes. We know for a fact the administration's been gunning for this, so, you know, what's the point though? Devaluing of the U.S. currency to empower our exports. All the CEO types are regretting their vote. Now, this is some unambiguously funny stove touching. A difficult time to invest. Everyone's paralyzed. I'm sorry I can't be particularly positive. The chaos that is reigning right now is causing everyone to sit on their hands. That's Citadel CEO Ken Griffith, ON Semiconductor CEO Hussein El-Khoury, Franklin Templeton CEO Jenny Johnson, and NASDAQ private market CEO Tom Callahan on the world of Donald Trump right now. Their comments over the past week capture a growing disquiet among business leaders, a month into a presidency that many of them had cheered. Who could have seen this coming? It is good to be reminded over and over and over and over and over again that the world is not a meritocracy, and oftentimes the people on top are complete retards. It is important to remember that. Like, these, you know, sniffing deadbeat dads who go out there and, you know, their sleepless nights are not from work but from partying, you know, and then they LARP to the media about how they're like business moguls with a, you know, higher sensibility to investment, and then it turns out like, no, they're just regular people but more arrogant. It makes them more stupid. Tesla's already tanking Europe. Brother, it's tanking you. Can you please explain how they can support the correct regulators? I'm not a... What do you mean? Could I explain how they think? Go ask them. Do you think there's a chance of impeachment? No. Well, 2008 moves, paragraph 6 to 7. Don't make me read things. Trump may have found a way to force U.S. Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. Oh no. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. Oh no, 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 no. Remember, I'm an accelerationist now. 2, 3, 4. Fiscal and monetary policy may now be set to trade places. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the administration wants to trim the deficit to 3% GDP on $1 spending cuts. Signs that effect are accumulating. Consumer sentiment declined in January for the first of 6 months. Bloomberg U.S. Conditions Index has pulled 47% in the last 2 weeks. Implying economic activity is slowing. The Atlanta Fed's estimate of annualized real GDP growth in the first quarter was nearly in half. 2.3% of growth, 4% a month ago. The yield on the 10-year Treasuries dropped 50 basis points. Omen of looming recession. A slowdown, particularly one accompanied by a weaker labor market, most likely prompt the Fed to lower rates. It's hard to see the central bank easing otherwise, but inflation's on the way up already. The latest read of core personal consumption expenditures, the Fed's favorite inflation gauge, came in at 2.8% year over year in December, which is still uncomfortably higher than the 2% target. As long as the economy is going to delay historical unemployment, the Fed can delay rate cuts until inflation is tamed. By cutting spending, however, Trump may force monetary easing to support fiscal austerity rather than the other way around. It doesn't even matter if spending cuts cause the economy to slow. As long as those cuts are a threat of them coincide with the slowdown, the Fed will likely act. How would this allow them? How would this allow Trump to force these interest rate cuts, though? We getting stagflation, boys? We're for sure getting stagflation. Stagflation is the worst case scenario, right? Well, my thought is, and I could be wrong, my thinking here is that it won't be enough. the Fed could cut the interest rate down to 2%, make it 1.8%. I don't know. They can cut it, but make it really easy to borrow money. I don't think they could do that enough to compensate for the decreased economic activity which will be caused by the inflation, which will be caused by the tariffs. Like, the consumer confidence would decrease beyond the point where because the Fed cutting rates has like a disproportionate effect on the economic activity of people who are wealthy enough to frequently borrow. You're not borrowing money that much, except for with your credit card. That's what we're talking about. When you're poor, middle income or whatever, right? We're mostly talking about people on the upper crust. But their hyperactivity compared to like lower activity on the ground, what's going to happen when all those earning reports hit? And then it's like, oh yeah, the upper crust, they were borrowing like crazy because Trump cut the Fed to like 1.8% or whatever. But on the bottom, it turns out no one's buying shit because none of them were basing their consumer confidence off of the interest rate. You understand what I'm talking about? People who are more economically minded than me, like I'm right on this, right? Like cutting this won't. Not only will inflation go up, but cutting the interest rate won't fundamentally affect the underlying. The inflation will exceed the benefits that you could receive from such. Yes, you're correct. All right, well that's good. I mean, it's bad, but it's it's very bad. But that's good. All I'm hearing is buy the dip. Oh, sure. When the dip comes, buy the dip, bro. Just make sure to distribute your savings accounts between banks. So when you do a bank run, it's less likely that all of your shit is the uninsured deposit because the government becomes insolvent or whatever. How long until they cancel FDIC insurance? They literally have tried to do that. B2B subs are always valuable. That's true. That's true. That's true. B2B subs actually appreciate it. This is not financial. Hedge funds and tech are panicked in the U.S. Hedge funds are rushing to the exit at nearly a record pace. Hedge funds have been selling U.S. tech stocks in February at the fastest rates in the 2021 meme stock craziness. Over the last 5 days alone, they've reduced their exposure at the second highest pace in 4 years. How much in a relative sense? This might not be anything. I don't. This could be a bubble pop, or this could be Warren Buffett sold his S&P shares, but it's not true. Oh, no. Wait. Warren Buffett makes stunning move by selling S&P 500 funds he told everyone to buy. Uh-oh. Might want to update, edit title of previous YouTube investment advice video. Outdated. Upload new video. So, guys, I have some new news. This is misleading. Holdings were under 0.1% of Berkshire. Says he has no ETF holdings. If he's selling, that means there's more supply, and that means they're cheaper, so I should buy them right away. Yeah, oh yeah, for sure, 100%. Don't do that. This is not financial advice. Well, we'll see how things go, I guess. If I recall correctly, he's been selling U.S. assets and moving them to Japan. I mean, unironically, and this is, again, not financial advice, but the way things are going, it really does make me wonder if, moving, for people who have the money to move it around, for me specifically, moving out of USD and into the euro, I don't know, I cannot imagine, I genuinely can't imagine that we're not going to see at least 8% year-over-year inflation at some monthly peak at some point during this year. I would be surprised if we didn't hit 8 at some point, The problem is the US being a reserve currency in our global economy. Yeah, you kind of can't escape it. Unless, I don't know, what's one currency that is completely untouched by U.S. economy? It was North Korean. Guys, I'm going all in. The Hermit Kingdom, they're going to hold on to my, savings. V-Bucks? They keep raising the cost of a Twitch subscription. What if I, invest in lots of Twitch subscriptions and then pull them back out once we're, on the other side? Invest in shekels? Unironically, that might be. I don't know. Is the U.S. dollar in danger of tanking?